Do you need this, Mrs. Kemp?
Back when I drank, I used to be something of a grumpy hipster. One of those self-appointed cultural guardians who sits in judgment of anything that dares flirt with the mainstream. Like most grumpy hipsters, I pretended I was too good for most of what the world had to offer, but in truth, I really resented the fact that I wasn't offering anything myself. I became so bitter about this perceived inadequacy that whenever I saw someone earn a little notoriety by accomplishing something I had only dreamed of, I immediately hated the bastard. Two cases in point, Sam Raimi and Kevin Smith. Back in my drinking days, I hated these guys. Sam Raimi had the audacity to actually make a movie, and a freaking zombie movie at that, when he was only 19. Did I ever make a zombie movie at 19? No. So by the time I reached 20, this little Raimi twerp was already making me feel past my prime. But fast forward a few years, and here comes Kevin Smith and his seminal indie film Clerks. What was Clerks about? It was about clerks, specifically one named Dante Hicks who worked at a convenience store. Hey, in the 1980s, I worked at a convenience store, and I spent the better part of a decade trying to write a script about it. How dare Kevin Smith beat me to that punch? Like most grumpy hipsters, I sat in judgment of both these cats without seeing any of their films. It was only when I nutted up and finally rented them that I realized I had wandered into something special. Not only are The Evil Dead and Clerks great examples of what a filmmaker can do with a little ingenuity and a lot of hard work, but they're damn fine films in their own right. Let's start this party off with Sam Raimi's freak show, The Evil Dead. Here is the kind of movie you'd expect from a fellow comic book geek who grew up watching the same horror movies that you did. The story of The Evil Dead opens with 5 college kids who decide to spend spring break together, not on the beaches of South Padre, but in the Tennessee hills in an isolated cabin. Once in the cabin, they find an ancient Sumerian version of the Book of the Dead and a tape recorder that plays demonic incantations from the book. As a lark, they play the tape for fun and all hell breaks loose. I mean that literally. First, one of the crazy kids goes walking into the woods at night and the forest comes alive and rapes her. Then they discover that the bridge back to town has been destroyed. Then the girl who was raped becomes possessed, stabs one of the others in the ankle with a pencil, and soon the house is crawling with crazy zombies, which Ash, the intrepid protagonist, played by then unknown Bruce Campbell, has to dispatch with a chainsaw. For horror geeks, this flick is critical cool. Now, most fans of The Evil Dead have their favorite moments, and I am no exception. I'm not the first one to point out one of the film's creepiest early scenes when the car rolls down a worn track toward the cabin with nothing on the soundtrack but an ominous pounding. As the car pulls into the yard, it is revealed that the pounding is a porch swing banging against the side of the house, but when one of the students approaches the battered structure, the swing suddenly stops, as if some invisible entity has been caught in the act. I'm also a big fan of the moment when Cheryl, the girl who was raped in the forest, first appears as a demon. The kids are fooling around with telepathy by guessing number and suite from a deck of playing cards, and Cheryl begins to announce them all in a demonic voice.
It's a 7.
I don't believe it!
Of spades. Queen of spades. 4 of hearts. 8 of spades. 2 spades. Jack of diamonds. Jack of clubs.
Disturbed our sleep, awakened us from our ancient slumber. You will die!
The film has already put us on edge, and this big reveal, while anticipated, comes at us when we're least prepared for it. All in all, The Evil Dead is a carnival ride of carnage, a film so shocking in its excessive use of gore that it received an X rating in 1981 and caused viewing audiences to ponder if a film could possibly go much further. Today, over 30 years later, films not only can, but they have. And with The Evil Dead remake, the world of horror has waited with bated breath to see how far this new film dares to go. Pretty damn far, if the trailer is any indication.
All right.
Let's leave demon-possessed zombies behind now and take a look at our cool indie film, a curiously groundbreaking comedy by the now ubiquitous Kevin Smith. When Clerks came onto the scene in 1994, it took the world by storm for a couple of reasons. First, like The Evil Dead, Clerks was originally given an NC-17 rating, the non-pornographic equivalent of an X, not because of graphic violence or sexual imagery, but because of language. That's right. Because of the film's sexually explicit dialogue and graphic descriptions of various sex acts, Clerks was deemed too strong for an R rating, even though it showed no real violence and no one engaging in sex. But this is part of what makes Clerks special. Without question, the language is explicit and in some cases bordering on offensive. At the same time, the screenplay for Clerks hits a sweet spot where the graphic dialogue is concerned, and in my opinion, no other Kevin Smith film comes close to that spot again. I'm not saying Smith hasn't made other good movies. I happen to think Chasing Amy and Dogma are narratively superior to Clerks. Red State is a textbook demonstration of just how talented Smith is as a filmmaker. And I even admit a fondness for Jersey Girl despite the fact that it is hated by most Kevin Smith fans and mocked by Smith himself. What I'm saying about Clerks, and especially the offensive language, is that Kevin Smith does something unusual with profanity. He turns it into poetry. Clerks is a snappy, rhythmic film, clever in its pace, nonchalant in its execution, and many of its more shocking moments, such as Veronica's description of snowballing or Caitlin Bree's inadvertent sex with a corpse, sort of hit you out of left field before you realize what's happened. The dialogue is musical, and it doesn't take long for you to become inured to its shock value. The characters of Clerks are who they are, no pretense or apologies, and that gives the film its energy. This is why I contend that no other Kevin Smith film hits that vulgarity sweet spot. I adored Mallrats, the next Kevin Smith film after Clerks, and I'm already on record about Chasing Amy and Dogma. But by the time we get to Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back, the dialogue feels less earthy and natural and more forced and affected, as if Smith has stopped listening to the musical way people talk and is now trying to set a record for the number of times the F word is used in a single film. But I realize that's just carping. I still love Kevin Smith, and I love Sam Raimi. If you're an aspiring filmmaker looking to follow your bliss, The Evil Dead and Clerks are great films from which to draw inspiration. Hey, if a couple of comic book geeks with vision and a dream can make stuff this good on next to no budget, why aren't the people with the real money doing it? Don't bother answering that. Just get out there, grab a camera, and start shooting.
You know, there's a million fine-looking women in the world, dude. They don't all bring you lasagna at work. Most of them just cheat on you.
All right, we've seen what you can do with a boy. How are you when they come a little bigger?